So I love the thing right at the beginning because I think it's really a truth. It says, certainly illness and mortality are two of the greatest viridities and sources of suffering in our lives. But how many over the last couple of weeks have had a little bit too much with that kind of suffering?
Right.
A little bit too much illness, a little bit too much death, a little too, and it's hard, isn't it? It's hard work. I think it's not just psychically hard, but my body is tired because of it all. How about you? How are you dealing with it?
Meditation.
Yeah.
That helps. It comes in waves. Like if I have had a good night's sleep, I do much better with it than if I haven't. I found myself to be kind of thin-skinned. Like if we're watching a movie, I'm more upset by things in the movie than I normally would be.
Right.
I have to be like really careful and gentle with myself and not, try to be positive and not see really heavy dramas. I think comedy is the best way to go right now. Otherwise, I go to bed all kind of unsettled, and we don't need that. So taking really good care, being in nature, meditation, and art is helpful.
You know, and that being in meditation, can I tell you, that's one of the reasons why on Sunday I told everyone, come up and walk around the campus. Because I don't know if you have a park or not around you, but at least this is a space where you can be in the middle of, in a very safe space where you can be in the middle of nature a little bit. Yes, Joe?
I was just going to tell Nancy that I got something via email from like Blue Cross Blue Shield, and it was talking about how to keep your sanity, during this time, which I'm not doing very well as a side note. But one of the things was they had a list of 25 comforting movies.
Oh.
So they were suggesting,
Oh, wait. Where was this? I need to get to that list.
I can send it to Jim and then he can send it out to you. And,
okay,
and
that would be really helpful.
But I'll share you.
What was the site that you got it from, though?
I think it was Blue Cross Blue Shield. They send me, because that's my insurance company through school, and they just randomly, send you kind of tidbits. The other one was 42 easy challenges, and it was like a list. The one that stuck, I just remember, was clean at one shelf. So it's also a list of things you could do. One was coloring. Just a bunch of different things you could do.
Right.
Yeah, so I think watching, lighter movies is probably a good plan.
Yeah.
That might even be something you have the office set out to everybody.
Could be. Could be. It wouldn't hurt for any of us to have more strategies during a time like this.
Yeah, especially since we know you guys like to watch a movie here or there once or twice a week.
Once in a while.
Yeah, believe me, we've got those 25 movies if you want one. So once you get the list, just let us know.
Yeah. Well, and but the thing of it is that we know about death and about illness as well, because in many ways, the reason why he talks about them together is because there's very, very much a connection. In illness, you go through many of the very same issues as with death without the final termination type of thing, but you're doing a whole bunch of the same type of work as you're going through that. And so I want you to think for a second and remember that death that happened, those illnesses you went through, I want you to remember how it didn't destroy you completely. In fact, if you're honest, some of those times actually gave you a lot of strength beyond what you would have had anyway. Isn't that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So take like 15 seconds to just tell us about one of those times. I wish we had time for everyone to tell really complete stories about that, but just tell us about one of those moments for you. For myself, it was a little boy that we knew named Joe, who died when he was 8, Joe? 6. And it was just really tough because a 6-year-old shouldn't die. And yet from that, the music that he placed in my soul, continues to sing to me to this day. Who else? How have you emerged from one of those places different, better than what you would have without it? Yes, Jay.
In 2012, I had a problem, and I was being treated at University North Cancer Center, but I didn't have cancer. And they didn't know what it was, and it was obviously very serious. And they did biopsies and all this stuff all the time, and not knowing what it was, but I had some bad effects from everything. And, basically faced death. And I found that so liberating, and I found a peace in it. And it's been that way ever since. And it was like a trial.
Nice. Nice. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anyone else?
Well, I'm having I'm in the midst of a really tough time right at the moment. I'm online with a group of people who have the same disease I do. It's myalgic encephalomyelitis. So say that 10 times. But it's like, I feel like I have an elephant in my chest, and it's really hard to breathe, and the pain shoots up into the brain, and it's like, I just know though that it's gonna get better. This is gonna pass too, but I also know it'll come back again. I've lived with this since I was 19 years old, off and on.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I find meaning. It's hard to talk with people who are well about, because my paradigm of life, like I can't come to church even when the quarantine's off, because if I get a cold from anybody there, it immediately goes to pneumonia because my lungs are so. It's like, God, I'm not trying to get morbid here or get pity or anything. I'm just trying to, I guess, relate what it's like to not have health. So if you are healthy, go out and celebrate for me, please.
Yeah. And Judy, don't ever feel like you need to apologize about talking honestly about death. Too often in America, we don't talk honestly enough about it, which is part of the reasons why we struggle mightily with it, is because we don't have a healthy relationship to it. I love this story about the Dalai Lama essentially practicing his own death, because I don't think that's a bad thing for us to do. It's a good thing for us to think what it would be like, to imagine what people would say at our funeral. In fact, in a little bit, we may even go through the meditation that he puts in the book about that, because it's important for us sometimes to know that it's part of who we are, right? As mortal beings, that's part of what's going to be part of us, is our death as well as our life, right?
Well, the thing is with this, when you have a chronic illness, you're not going to get well.
Right.
It's like, so it's.
But remember, part of what they said in here, and I think that this is important for all of us to remember, is we're not seeking. Well, we do seek curing. We want to get fixed, right? We want to get past whatever it is that's in our life. But the more important value is what healing happens in the midst of that curing or non-curing.
But
right?
This has presented so many opportunities. Like, I just watched a Zoom thing at 5 o'clock. Julia Alvarez, the author, and another author from Powell Books. And it's like you got to listen to them have a discussion for an hour.
Yes.
That's the thing. I wouldn't be able to go to Powell's Books in Portland, Oregon and see that in person.
Right.
But it was like it takes me out of my own pain right now to be able to go to that space.
Yep.
And share that with these two authors.
Right. But that's at least part of what they mean by healing as opposed to curing, right? You may and may not be able to get some of the ailments fixed, but you do get to, your spirit gets to grow. You get to grow in different directions than what some of that hurt is bringing on. So I'm glad you're finding that out. How about the rest of you? How are you dealing with it?
Well, 4.5 years ago, my mother passed away, and I was everything legal for her. And as I say, there's 4 siblings and 1 step sibling, and 4 of us were on the same page, and then one family member in a completely different book. And because of the challenge of going through that, to be the bear of protection for my mother, and doing what she established in her trust and her will, it really allowed me to stand up and fight for my mom, even though I knew it was going to really divide me from one of my siblings. And so it really gave me some strength. I knew I had strength, but I had mama bear strength.
Mm-hmm.
It gave me mama bear strength.
Anyone else?
Well, I do believe that there is an afterlife in one form or another that I don't understand, but I had my girlfriend that I taught with years ago, her name was Debbie, and we were like Mutt and Jeff. We did a lot together, and she was an art teacher and I was the drama teacher at school. She died in her sleep at 52. And it was like nobody knew that was coming. And to this day, they're not sure why she died, because like brain aneurysms don't always show up on things. Anyway, what's wonderful about her death is that she's been with me so much. I still feel her presence in me. And I do believe there is an afterlife, and that somehow she's been with me in looking down or up or wherever, through our life now that we're having. And I feel that way about my mother, who died 26 years ago, my father. I have like a council of people that I refer to, if I have issues or feelings, even about this coronavirus, they're up there saying it's gonna pass, you're gonna be okay, keep going, So I think that life doesn't end in death.
Yeah.
Whether it's your own or someone else's, that's my own personal belief.
Yeah. Yeah. And Nancy, just kind of a side note. Does your council of death argue with you still? And do they argue with you as much as what they did in life? Because mine, that's one of the things I like about it, is they don't argue quite as much. I get away a little bit more.
Yeah. Mine too. They're all cheering me on.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, let's stick with that. Yeah.
One of the things that I love about my profession is my job. The job of religion in some ways is to try to ask these kinds of questions to us and try to give us some kinds of answers. Now, we haven't always done a great job at that. We've tried to give definitive answers where there's not definitive answers. We've tried to say this always happens. And you're right, with death, we're in that space of we don't have perfect answers, but we try to be with each other in those questions. And so that's one of the reasons why I love this, that I get to do. But it's hard work, because I have to fight my tendency to have right answers, because I'm pretty intelligent, I'm pretty able, I've grasped a lot of things, and so I want to give you, here's the thing that'll fix you now. Here's the thing.
Yeah, could you work on that a little?
Yeah.
I'd love that.
I do like the thing that they said towards the end of this chapter on death, where they talked about 3 different ways to try to face death, right? Let me see if I can find it here.
First,
one
I've
is-
got it right here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
First is with joy.
Mm-hmm,
The next best way is without fear.
mm-hmm.
And third best way, at least not to have regrets.
So how are you guys doing with those 3 things? With joy, without fear, at least to not have regrets. How are you doing along those lines?
Well, I don't want you to die, Jim. I just want to throw that in because I think we all need you too much. So don't think about your own too much, okay? I find no joy in thinking of you gone. But
But
the
that
joy-
is part of the problem. When I look at death with Joni and
Yeah.
it's harder for me to see joy in that moment. There's some
Yeah.
people that I look at death with joy a whole lot with. I'm just kidding. But you know what I'm saying? Those people that are close to you, it is harder just to be in that space of joy.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Joe.
I don't think I feel afraid of death. I am definitely afraid of leaving tons and piles of stuff that my children will have to clean up.
Yeah.
Because I just got done with that from my folks, because my dad died 2.5 years ago and mom died last year. And holy Judas, was there a lot of stuff to clean up.
You know what helps with that, Jamie? Can I give you some hints? Move to Yuma, and 7 years later move to Tucson, and it's amazing how much stuff you go, I guess we don't need that.
I think I would have to move much, much further for a very long time.
Yeah.
I've thought about that.
I mean, one of the problems that all of us in America have is it's way too easy for us to collect stuff. And trying to figure out how to let go of those things we've collected and release them, both the physical objects and the emotional objects, to release them. That's an important thing, good thing for us to do. Because that's where a lot of the regrets lie. You know? How about the rest of you? Where are you on that scale?
I think for me, it's the next great adventure.
Uh-huh.
Like Nancy, I'm confident that actually we're eternal beings. So my fear of death has just faded for decades. Where I figure I go on to another. I've kidded somebody said, if I went to heaven right now, I'd ruin the place. So I've still got some growing to do, and I figure that's what future lifetimes are there for, to make enough progress where I fully enter into everything that I echo heaven, and that everybody eventually gets to that point.
Anyone else?
I actually welcome death.
Tell me why.
Because I see it as a relief. It's dying. I'm not real sure about.
I share some of that struggle too.
Death itself, that's fine. I've said for years I don't want to live past 75, but now I'm going to be turned 70 in a couple of weeks, so I might have to revise that a tiny bit. But I don't know if it's the process of dying.
Yeah.
Dying in your sleep, that would be great, Nancy.
Yeah, exactly.
Joe?
I was just going to share with Judy that I read something once about the different ways that God heals us, and the ultimate healing is through death. And so maybe you don't look at it as, someone who's in the process of dying, but someone who's in the process of being ultimately healed of everything. And I've always kind of liked that. And then I wanted to share just with regrets, and it's so hard for me with our jobs, and then maybe some of you who are retired can give me hope, but when you're working, it's so consuming. I have a regret that God's going to smack me in the head and say, you know, what were you doing? You worked your whole life. You didn't enjoy, you know, the beautiful planet or the things that you could do. And that's my fear or scariness of regretting that something will happen and not really having the time because of our jobs to do more that I would like to do.
And Joni and I share a really interesting thing. Her dad died at 54, was it?
55, I think.
55. And my dad died at 71 within a year of retiring. So neither one of them had that end of life time of just being free and doing and you know, living out without the responsibilities of jobs. And so when we look towards retirement, we don't want to do the same thing as our dads.
Jim, I was just thinking that the thought or the objectives of living without fear or being without fear and no regrets and I can't remember what the other one was.
Joy.
Joy, thank you. Are really a good way of just living. And so if you live every day like that, it doesn't matter when you get to the end of your life, you're just there and you've arrived.
Okay, so let me lead you through this meditation so you can kind of try to essentially do that, because that's essentially what this meditation is about. Okay, so it starts, and this is the Dalai Lama who's kind of presenting this to us. It starts by reflecting on these words for a couple minutes. Anything that has a birth has a death, and I am no exception. Just rest in those words. Anything that has a birth has a death, and I am no exceptions. So imagine yourself on your deathbed and ask yourself the following questions. Have I loved others? Have I brought joy and compassion to others? Has my life mattered to others? Imagine your loved ones making preparations for your funeral and referring to you as the late so-and-so. What might people say about you? Are you happy with the words they might use, the stories they might tell? What might you want to change now to change what will be said then? Finally, resolve yourself to say, what do I do now? How do I live my life with purpose now so that when I arrive there, I am at peace? Time will never remain still. And it's up to me, up to you, to use that time in the most meaningful way. How will you live in harmony with your deepest aspirations, so that when that final day arrives, you are able to leave with ease and without remorse? The Dalai Lama said he did this several times a day. Now he's a little bit older than most of us except Ed. Just kidding, Ed. But but he's definitely is looking more face to face with death. But all of us are not quite as young as we used to be, are we? And so what is it that we want to resolve during this last 5, 10, 20, 30 years of our life, whatever it happens to be? What are the things that are still not completed? And I don't mean I want to get these many more movies on my shelf things, right? Because I got those too, and I know you do. What are the other things that will complete that life for you? You don't have to answer that for us, but you do want to work towards answering it for yourself.
One thought I had when Joni said, you know, the time maybe she hasn't spent in nature, and my work takes a lot of my time, and I love my work. I am so blessed, and I don't know if I will get to a point where I will retire and have all this time to go do all those hikes that I would have liked to have done. And by then, I don't know if I'll be able to. But loving my work now is really important to me.
I think that's not a bad thing, because the last thing you want to do is to be acting in some place or some way that it doesn't feel like the full life that you want it to be. And so if you're in a space where you are living full life, live it well. Yes, Jade.
I think we have an inner voice to know what we're to do in certain times in our life. Like someday you may wake up and, you know, this part of my life is over because it's time to let someone else take my place.
Yeah.
And I'm in the next chapter. And I know for me, I feel good about what I'm doing today. And also I'm starting to see the next chapter.
Yeah, yeah.
And actually for me, a lot of the next chapter opened up for when my husband and I came back to St. Francis.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And you did what?
Came back to St. Francis.
We were married at St. Francis 20 years ago and went 20, 30 years ago to St. Francis, and then we came back.
I think in some ways we have an advantage over our parents' generation, who tended to be in the same job or the same profession at least their whole life. And those of us who have switched professions have already gone through some of that struggle of leaving that which defined us to move towards that new thing that defines us. And so I think there's some value to that type of change where you've already made it.
I was just going to say to Joni that, you know, I'm now retired a year, and there are things I miss about teaching. That I miss the routine, and I miss the kids, and I miss, you know, the camaraderie. So, you know, enjoy that while you can, because it, you know, that, oh, retirement's going to be wonderful. It isn't always, you know, it's like you have good days and bad days, whether you're retired or you're working. And when you're retired, you have to define yourself. And your job has, in my case, my job defined me for 42 years. And I'm still teaching in my own way, which I like. And I am enjoying retirement, especially now, because I really wouldn't want to go back in the fall with all this COVID stuff. But you know what I'm trying to say, Joni, about loving just, you know, your work. So I know there are times you're not going to love your work, and the kids. But there are times that, you know, whatever you're doing is not always perfect.
Well, and it's kind of what Jamie said, like just being in the present and looking for
Yeah.
your blessings
Yes.
today, because we
Right.
don't know what tomorrow is. If we'll be here tomorrow, we'll be able to, you know, have these long term plans. So yeah, just appreciating where you are today and
Yeah.
look for your blessings there.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So as the authors move towards the next chapter, this meditation, they called it, was an interesting meditation for me as they went and just were together. But in the midst of just going through and visiting the Dalai Lama's space of living, they went through some really interesting questions. And so I just wanted to present them to us one by one and just get your thoughts on your views on the different things. Just at the beginning was just a real simple thing where he said, I had decided to see the pat down, meaning the security space, as a brief message rather than an intrusion of my personal space or as an accusation of my potential danger. And I don't know about you, but I hate going to airports now because I hate that whole process. I complain about it every single time, don't I, Joni? Every single time, because it seems so pointless to me.
I got that brief massage last time I flew. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. What is it about life that you wish wasn't there? And how do you tell a different story about it than whatever it is that currently is going through your head? What is it that you need to re-image, I guess I'm saying? Go ahead, Jade.
Well, my daughter is on a drug that she has no ability to fight infection for the last couple of years. So she's in lockdown, and she's actually doing really well. She goes out for a blood test once a month, and then she actually has only gone for a TB test because the doctors don't even want her in their offices.
Yeah.
And, you know, you could sit there and say, it's kind of like, for me, I have to take every day with it for her. And I can't waddle in this.
Yeah.
Because then she won't have any quality of life.
Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, go ahead, Jan.
I have started a gratefulness practice, and this is something that is frequently recommended for people with all kinds of issues, depression, chronic pain, you name it. You know, it seems like being grateful is thought to be helpful for a lot of different conditions. And I've found that it's been helpful for me. I try to just write down 10 things that I'm grateful for. And I can remember at a time in my life when I was very depressed, at times I could only put down things like, I'm grateful for the refrigerator, you know. It was like, I'm grateful that I've got 4 walls around me, very basic stuff. But we live in such a luxurious lifestyle compared to so many other places in the world. And I feel like I have so much to be grateful for, even though my life is certainly not ideal, but it has helped me see things from a different perspective.
Thank you. And again, that's a good introduction to what we're going to be doing over the next, for the rest of this time, we're going to begin to look at the practices that we implement in our life. And most of us have some of those practices already, and one of them is gratitude. And how do I use that type of practice to transform this moment differently than what it's doing right now? So thank you for introducing that. How about the rest of you? What is your brief massage that you're having, that you have to transform?
My friend on Facebook who believes that every night her home is going to be broken into and she must defend herself with her guns. And she really likes our president too. I get to practice compassion and deep breathing when I read her posts.
Yeah, not simple all the time, is it? Yeah. I've learned that this too shall pass always helps, at least to some degree. I love that he followed that up by just a little note that he made after the brief massage. He talks about entering into the residence of the Dalai Lama and saw that the living room was a prayer room. I just love that image, because I think that sometimes we've too isolated prayer from everything else. And so how are you, in the midst of that other stuff, incorporating prayer into what gets you through those brief massages? Right? How are you making it so that your living and your praying are not separate?
Well, I'm putting up shrines in the 2 rooms that I spend most of my time in. And it's going to be, there are going to be areas that I can look at and think there's something beyond what I'm dealing with right now. I think sort of the same idea as the Plum Village bell that rings every so often to remind them to be mindful in that moment.
Yeah.
I think I might even have things in all rooms to remind me to be aware of where I want to go internally in my own mind. I don't want to go to, I have friends who are so angry about the president that they can barely talk about anything else.
Yeah.
And I've had to tell them I don't want to listen to it anymore because I just can't cope with it.
Yeah.
With that anger. I can't cope with it.
I think especially in a space like COVID, the things that can derail our prayer, the things that can draw us further and further down a wrong way. I mean, if you get started on TV, you could watch stuff that can drag you further and further away from a peaceful state, right? So how do you turn that differently? I mean, obviously, they talked about TV a chapter or 2 ago and how TV spews its own messages, and somehow we have to learn how to live differently. But I don't think we can live without TV as well. Jade? Or not easily?
My thought on COVID-19 is basically if we had in the big picture a choice between having 4 more years of Trump and what that could be, or COVID-19, maybe we had to have COVID-19 so that Trump wouldn't get reelected.
I think it's always helpful to see larger pictures. than just whatever's right in front of you. And I think you're right, that type of larger picture helps.
It's just changed a lot of the positions, let's say, in how politics and everything, and not that we have to always go through such horrible things like COVID-19, but that might be a good thing that comes out as a change in our political situation.
Well, you know, in South Africa, they had apartheid, and Nelson Mandela was incarcerated for almost 30 years. And when he got out, he was elected, apartheid was abolished. And so, you know, I hope and pray that something wonderful will come out of this COVID, just as apartheid was abolished. There are good things on the horizon, and I think we need to reframe it. I think, you know, I watch, it's called The World in 90 Seconds at 7 o'clock CBS with Gayle King. I watch that 90 seconds, then I'm done. That's about all I can take.
That's enough for you.
Yeah. I have the newspaper, but at least, you know, I'm reading what I want. So that's a strategy. And then, you know, just being outside, being in nature, and you know, the flowers are still blooming, the sky is still blue, and there's a lot to be thankful for. I also have, I don't have, not urns, but what was it you said that you had in your house, Jan?
I refer to it as shrines.
Shrines, right. I don't have shrines. I do have crosses, but I also have, you know, like my favorite Bible verses, and I have those like next to my bed, and I read those often, and you know, Psalm 23 and Philippians 4, 1-9. Those are, you know, very helpful for me. And they
lift you up.
Yes, yes. And the mantras that the Dalai Lama talked about, I think a mantra is also really helpful. Yeah. I mean, just even saying Jesus Christ, which we don't say a whole lot of at St. Francis, but you know, to me, when I say that, it's a reverence and a holiness that when I repeat it in my mind or out loud has a calming effect. I don't even know if calming's the right word, but I feel like there are words that help to center me. And there are thoughts that do the opposite. So I try to like change the words when they're not helping me.
Does everyone know what a breath prayer is?
I know what breath meditation is.
Yeah, a breath prayer is basically something that you say that you can breathe in and breathe out, and it's done. So the prayer that the thief prayed from the cross or spoke to Jesus is one of those. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. So you breathe in and breathe out. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Okay, so a thing like that. And so it can be any very short phrase that allows you to recenter yourself and remember a different story than whatever's right in front of you. And you just breathe it in and out several times to be able to draw yourself back to a better space for you.
One of the ones that, go ahead, Jen.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I was just going to say, I was reading something today, and it described a mantra as a mind protector.
Mind protector, nice.
And I thought, wow, I need more mind protectors.
Yeah, especially right now when there is so much of very strong import that is happening around us. The types of things we're facing are not small things, right? A world pandemic, an election system that right now seems completely unable to do anything, right? It's completely in disarray right now. All of our political system, the racial unrest, those are not easily fixable things. So somehow in the midst of all that, we have to find some way to alter our mind back to better spaces, right? Go ahead.
My spiritual exercises urge me to think of them once every hour, or just a second or after a minute. And I have always failed miserably on remembering throughout the day. I catch only a few hours. I'm finally getting my phone broke down, so my new phone has 8 alarms that I can set on the hour, and that I'm using that as a kickstart. That when that goes off, I'll take just a second to recall the rest of the thing I'm practicing that day, and get me back on track.
Good. And I think it takes that type of thing. I love the story that the author Douglas, not one of the two big names, but the Jewish man who walks with them, Abrams.
Yeah.
And where he talks about the archbishop and how he was kind of chastising him, I guess you could say, but drawing him into a new space. And he said this: "It was as if I could see the archbishop in a split-second pause, collect his consciousness, reflect on his options, and choose his response, one that was thoughtful and engaged rather than reacting and rejecting." And just before that, in this thing, they said, "The real secret of freedom may simply be extending this brief space between stimulus and response." Right? Somehow, in the midst of life, whatever life throws at us, figuring out how to do that, whatever it was that the archbishop was doing right then, to respond to it differently than what we would have in the very first breath. So how have you learned to do that?
Twice in the last month, I've seen professionals say something similar. Pause, and instead of a knee-jerk reaction that always comes up from our unconscious, pause, breathe, and smile. Then respond.
Yeah. Yeah. That's essentially a breath prayer, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whether you're saying words or not, you're essentially calming the heart to be more open.
One of the things I love to do is I blow bubbles.
Oh.
I mean, I love it. And it's good for my breath. And kids around me love it. Adults around me love it when I go out and blow bubbles. I always have bubbles around. And I love how the surface, when I was teaching, I did a whole thing on bubbleology with my kids. And it's like, we filled a pool with water and put Dawn, there's a way to make it with Dawn detergent and stuff. Anyway, and put a hula hoop in it. We could put a child in a wheelchair in that pool and bring the hula hoop up around them and encase them in a bubble.
Wow.
And it was such a cool thing to do with these kids because they'd never experienced anything like that. It was fun. I love bubbles.
Nice, thank you. Anyone else? How have you found to do that pause? Jamie, you're shaking your head because it is hard to do that, isn't it?
And I haven't found a way.
I think it's the ongoing stuff of life. But I will say that I think that that's where aging really helps us. No, and I'm serious about that. As I watch the older people that I've dealt with, who are dealing with much more of the heavier stuff of life, right? Illnesses or body issues that are not going to go away, deterioration of dreams or whatever that are different than when you're 30 or 40 and have the strength of youth to guide you. I found that they deal with some of those things in a much stronger way than what they would have at 30. Have to. right?
There you go.
And so it's remarkable sometimes the strength that appears in those moments. You know, I don't always have that strength. So it's remarkable when I see the people who do. And go ahead.
I have some friends in their 20s here in the complex, and they're always coming to me, and it's like, I just keep telling them, just relax. This isn't forever. You're going to get through this.
Yeah.
You know, but they're such strong, fierce women that they give me hope, but they come to me for wisdom, and I'm like, don't come to me for wisdom. I said, I'll just chill a little bit, take a really deep breath in and really deep breath out about 4 times, and it's a temporary thing. The things I worried about in my 20s, I look back now and go, man, I wasted so much energy on that.
Sure. But Judy, do not discount your wisdom, please, because that's hard-earned wisdom, right? Those ages, those problems, those struggles that life has tossed at you, the years that you've gone through are something that are an invaluable resource for a 20-year-old because they haven't got that yet. They haven't got that perspective of it. And so for you to help give them a vision of healing that they don't have is an amazing thing.
14 years ago, I was in an accident that put me in the hospital or nursing homes for 2 years straight. And some of those nursing homes, and I thought, this could be the rest of my life. There was no one I could talk to, and everybody, all my table mates, had lost it mentally, and none of the staff was interested in talking to anybody but other staff. And I could see this as a possible future for me. So I, learning how to swallow hard. But when I came out of that after 2 years, my pastor, who was quite a few years younger, said, "Hey, I bet you're so glad to get out of all that hell that you've gone through for the last 2 years." And I said, "What hell? I don't remember any hell." And then after good God, I really have learned how to do that. 30 years ago, I would have been a mess.
So they dealt with one last issue in the midst of this, and it was the story where they begin to go into the communion time, where they shared communion together. People from several different major religions that didn't have that as a custom, but were together in the moment of being together. And they talked about our communion and how sometimes it's a way to be able to say us and them, right? A division of. And one of the great things for me about the Methodist Church is how it showed me a different vision than how that was used. Communion, the thing I remember about my very first communion as a Methodist was all are welcome at this table, as opposed to where I'd been at where I was not welcome at the table. Loved by the pastor, but not welcome at the table.
Yeah.
Okay. And what they talked about in that section was about taking away the us and them and finding ways to be together around those things which have often been used to divide us. So where have you found in your life the ability to step beyond that? Where did you tear down a wall between you and someone else? Some wall that had been strongly constructed by somebody for some reason, but that was keeping you apart.
I think when I was at South Point Catholic High School and I did a comparative religions class, that was very opening to me. Yeah. And I did a paper on suffering of the Jews through the last century.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it just opened me up to a lot of different beginnings. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, nice. Thank you. Where else? Judy, it can be exactly what you're doing too, because in many places, somebody of your age doesn't deal with some of those young women that you're talking about. Those walls have been built between us. Sometimes they're the walls of the fact that I can afford a house now. I don't have to live with them, or whatever it happens to be, right? But the tearing down that has happened, that has allowed that have allowed you guys to be companions on that journey, is marvelous. That's a good thing.
I don't think she knows she's mute.
You're still.
Thank you. Sorry, I was talking away. You guys missed all my wisdom there. It's the reason why I sold my home and moved into an apartment. Was the social isolation I had in my home, and here I feel safe, and I've got a variety of people around me. And we have a whole community of Chinese scholars. I have young, old. Like, there's no way I would want to live in an over 55 or over 65 community. For me, not something I want to do.
Yeah.
You know, and I have, it's, even though I'm fairly isolated in some ways, I have a rich community here. So it keeps me going.
Yeah, good, thank you. But that does take stepping outside of the walls of that house that you used to have to be able to get to that, and recognizing the need to do that.
And it's one way to clutter your life.
Yeah, yeah. We have a couple minutes left. Who else would like to give us a bit of wisdom? Because we need it from each other. I don't mean that facetiously. I say it with a bit of a smile on my face, because we've all been told not to be the wise one, right? That I don't have the wisdom, but we all do. And who you are helps a lot. Joe?
No wisdom, but I wanted just to share with everybody, thank you, because I've heard some ideas tonight that I definitely am going to try and incorporate. And so I appreciate everybody sharing, because I've been trying to write down notes of, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to try that at least. So thanks, everybody.
Yes, Garnet.
Well, it kind of goes into our conversation earlier in tonight's class, but when I was in high school, and I don't know if I was a junior, senior, but I remember, and I still have this picture in my head. I'm laying in my bed, in my bedroom, by myself, and I envisioned myself as a very elderly woman on my deathbed. And what would it feel like? I mean, I don't know why this came to me, but what came to me in that moment was, is that all there is? Is that? And that's what made a huge difference in my life, that I did not want to live a life that in those last moments say, is that all there is?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
And a teenager, who would think of a teenager doing that?
And by the way, Garnet, I just can't believe you can't imagine back 7 years whether you were a junior or a senior.
I remember where I was laid in the bed.
Jim,
Yes.
I took the prayer from church on Sunday, the breathe in love
Yes.
and release insecurity, and I wrote them down, and then I added some on the end.
Nice.
And I've been using those for meditation.
That's why I love that prayer where you could just breathe in one and release the other. And there's a bunch of stuff that all of us need to breathe in and breathe out.
Breathe out.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me talk to you for just a couple seconds about the next few weeks. as we've gone through these problems that we face, the struggles, the barriers, I might have been too ambitious. So I'm going to ask if we can do the next eight things differently. Let's deal with just 2 of them every week. Sometimes I had 2 or 3 or whatever put together, and I think we'll do them better if we do take 2 weeks on each one. So that'll give us 5 more weeks that we do. There's 8 different practices and then 2 concluding chapters. Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll revise the syllabus then for it to do that. So read the next 2 chapters, which are in your book. Hold on just a second.
Perspective and humility.
That's right, perspective and humility. So read those 2 chapters for next week. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your sharing. Thank you for giving to each other this way today.
Thank you.
So I just want to say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye,
Dad.
everybody.
Ciao.
Bye.